as you know, usually when we come to the close of the GABV annual meeting, we have a feedback round, and we will have this feedback round in a moment, but I suggested to Tom to kick off this conversation so that you can then respond to what I said. And can I ask the production team to turn down the volume? It's awfully loud, this microphone. I hope they hear that. So, first of all, I would like to just reiterate once again my gratitude to Banca Etica for hosting this meeting, and not just for having us here in Milano in this wonderful building and for having us in Padua, but more importantly because I feel this has been an extremely productive meeting. It has given me a lot to work off, and I think it has given us all a lot to work off. I'd like to start with a couple of action points for your reflection and maybe also response, and maybe you have other action points you would like to add to the list. And I'll start with the easy ones, which are in a way no-brainers and pretty obvious. So yesterday we closed the day with the Milano Declaration peace statement. And just so you understand what's going to happen with this, we're obviously going to be communicating this. We've already received some really nice media coverage in Italy, but we're sending out a package to our members with the declaration, the press release, and the report, so that you can replicate that if you wish. You don't have to, but if you wish, you can take this and use this in your own market and communicate it. The other no-brainer is the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty. We've got a working group of some of the leading banks on this topic set up. They're going to, and I should maybe also add, for those of you who were not in the workshop yet in Padua on this, we have signed a memorandum of understanding between the GABV and the initiative, which makes it extremely easy for all of your banks to sign up, because you are in a way already qualified for signing up to the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty. We will try to rally as many banks as possible from our movement so that we can go to COP29 and have something very concrete we can share there, and again, create more visibility and voice for the GABV, but also for the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty. Yesterday, we had our session with the CEOs on the collective commitment. I've already said this before. We are at the Secretariat going to collect all those commitments, and we will come back to those. We will revisit them. And like that, I think we have a wonderful kind of platform to keep the strategy that we approved yesterday at the AGM alive and move it forward and make it very concrete and tangible. Another good way of communicating what we are doing as a values-based movement. In Padua, we had a workshop initiated by the Impact Metrics Group, and I'm very grateful to that group for doing this. And we will explore two things that have come out of that workshop. The first one is this idea of being more systematic in our advocacy and engagement work by picking one or two topics, exploring them, and maybe sharing the resources on that so that we can together move forward. I think especially in advocacy, if the GABV advocates on behalf of 70 member banks, we can be much more powerful than if each one of you individually goes out there. But we need to integrate those efforts and make sure we use those resources wisely. So I think that's one thing we want to discuss further and see how far we get, since I would like to remind you all, we are operating with a very small team and a very slim budget, so we have to be careful that we do not bite off more than we can actually digest. But I do think there is value to explore that further. And related to that, I think there's also a worthwhile conversation to be had around impact metrics. And let me just state, personally, I'm quite skeptical about impact metrics in the sense that it's always about comparing apples with pears, what do you measure? Jobs created or greenhouse gas produced that you've saved, etc. How do you weigh that against each other? And that's where the values come in. However, there is now a strong movement in different levels, which is requiring, and I would not exclude that sometime in the future there will even be a necessity by the regulator that those of you that are talking about green products, about sustainable products, have to prove it in one way or another. And I think we should try to come together around a couple of impact metrics and rather take the initiative than have others lead that conversation. So something, again, to be explored together in our metrics community of practice, but as well as with this group of CEOs maybe in future annual meetings. Now, I know it's a long list, but that's all that's spinning around in my head. No, there's more actually. And don't worry, I'll get back to the technology bit. Steve Round just before said, yes, we have to explore this GBF and CEO relationship, but I think it's also a question of exploring the GBF and Governance Academy relationship. I think when we started as the GABV, we were always a CEO-led network, but as the GABV has matured, we're 15 years old now, we've seen a lot of CEO transitions. And everywhere where the values were embedded at the level of the boards, the mission continued in that bank when there was a CEO transition. And where that was not the case, it always got a bit shaky, and in some instances, the mission of the member bank might have changed. So I think I'm really glad, first of all, to the GBF that you all have been engaging with the GABV so hard, but I think in a way it's almost, it's very evident that we have to make sure all of our member banks boards understand values-based banking. I'm extremely grateful also to the Governance Academy for creating a systematic program for that. But I think we need to think about how we can expand the reach of what has been started with the Governance Academy. And I'm sorry if I'm jumping around from topic to topic, and I know it's a lot of information. We had a very good conversation this morning around marketing and communications, and I'm actually very grateful to my colleague Sonia Felipe, who stood up and also reminded the CEOs, yes, we can do all that, but we also need you to support us. And what I would like to do, I would like at future meetings to revisit this question around communications and branding, specifically the balance between how strong your brand is from your bank and the GABV brand should be. I used to be a chief executive myself, so coming from a small bank that is trying to build a brand in its own market, you don't want another brand messing up your branding and weakening it. So I understand that tension, but you cannot ask us to be visible and be, insightful and powerful and be more present. Our marketing budget, and I'll just put it out here so you realize that it's $50,000 50,000 euros a year. So you can imagine how far we can get with that. So if you want us to be more visible, then I think we may need to think about prioritization. And in that connection, I would just like to recall, just for your information, because I think, Darren, you mentioned we need standards, etc. We do have branding guidelines for the GABV. They're very clear, and it's up to you to use them and to implement them. And secondly, what I also would like to recall, responding to, I think, what Steve said before, we are also very clear about our brand values. There's a document on the internet, and if you would like to read them, I think that would be very helpful, because there was, in the conversation, this has come up, we need to be clear what is at the core of our brand, and I think we have that information. Now, before I come to the last point, which is the technology conversation, just one last point. On Monday, we had a conversation, a side meeting on correspondent banking. It's a project that we had started with the support of our supporting partner FMO, the Dutch Development Bank. They gave us a grant funding to make a survey of emerging market banks to see how we can connect them better with the payment system. Because of de-risking, they've been shut out of this. And we're going to move into a second phase of this project, where the idea is that we bring together GABV member banks in a collective bargaining action so we can approach together service providers for correspondent banking. This is something new. It's new territory for the GABV, and I don't know if it's going to work out, but I think it's very exciting thought, and because it's a really concrete piece of collaboration. But when we talked about that on Monday, we realized actually the more banks join this effort, the greater the chances that we can actually achieve something with that. So I invite you, and we realized also maybe this is not just an issue for emerging market banks, but actually for every one of our members. And what's great about this project, I think the fallback position is that everything remains as it is today, but the opportunity is tremendous going forward. So I just would like to invite you to consider that and think about that, and we will be sending out some information to every one of you. So if that is something you might consider, then please get back to us and we can explain to you what we're doing. Because until now we've only been targeting the emerging market banks. And now finally, coming back to this wonderful presentation that you did, Surjit, and I'm extremely grateful to you. It's been a fantastic, I think, kind of close of this technology topic we've been exploring together in these last 3 days. I had some very good conversations with the leadership of Banca Etica, but many others actually also approached me, and I think there's a huge appetite to keep this conversation going. And I don't know yet what exactly the solution is, but probably in the first stage, at this point, I think we simply don't know what artificial intelligence will means in every dimension. It's a huge topic. So what we would like to do is establish some form of a kind of a reflection group at a very strategic level, where to do that, I think we need ideally one of you or two of you or so to chair that process, because I think that'll give it the right direction, and we need a small group that can define the agenda of that reflection process, and then we start. I think it needs to be kind of very open to begin with, and as we speak more about this and as we reflect on this, I'm sure there will be, and speaking maybe also to what you asked, Walter, there will be opportunities that will eventually emerge out of those reflections where we suddenly see, oh, maybe we could collaborate here or we can collaborate there on very specific issues. So that is what I will do. So these are my thoughts coming out of this meeting, but please, Tom, I'm handing over to you so that we can have, I'd like to hear from others as well, from our members, of course, what they see.